Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first lecture of CS50 Miami for the JavaScript track. I apologize, I didn't have my headset with me yesterday, so we couldn't record the entire lecture. It would have been very nice just to do that in one shot and then just basically record everything that was said. Not that you guys wanted to hear, the same bad jokes over and over and over, but hey, they're gonna be there. All right, so what are we gonna do today? Well, today for this bonus video, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share with you my screen, and then with that we'll go ahead and start getting ready to install VirtualBox, CentOS, and get everything ready for on our server, including nodejs and a few other things. So here's what we have. We have some notes. I'm going to put those notes here on the screen, that way you guys can see what we're talking about. So few things that we don't need that. Few things here. We have download VirtualBox. So we're going to go and just grab that URL. Then we're going to go to Chrome. Hopefully Chrome works up. So there's Chrome. I'm going to go virtualbox.org. Click download. Make sure you select the right operating system, and then of course follow the instructions, install it, and go. CentOS, very much the same. Go to CentOS, then of course get it now, or CentOS/download. Download the DVD ISO. There is no need to download everything or just the minimal. The DVD is kind of a cool way to start. Notice I already have the DVD on my desktop. It just keeps it easier for me to access. It's already there. We don't have to wait whatever 20-something minutes for it to download, although here at FIU things download pretty fast. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to skip that and go straight to VirtualBox, right? So VirtualBox, here it is. VirtualBox is already set up and installed. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and trash this installation. So let's go and say remove with all the files. And then now at this point, we should be here. New virtual machine. So here we go. New. We're going to give this a name, something descriptive. So let's just say CS50. Then pick Linux. And then right after that, we can go to Red Hat. There is a few things that change in the background if you select the wrong architecture, but nothing that is going to really affect us. So as long as you have Linux and something else should be fine. But if you really want to be accurate, there is no CentOS. So the closest one will be Red Hat 64-bit because they're from the same family. Now we will continue there. We will give ourselves enough RAM. Make sure that you're not on the orange or the red areas. You always want to make sure that you're on the green. CentOS can run with with a minimum of like 512 megabytes, so 1 gig should be plenty. We'll go ahead and continue. Hard drive, of course, a small hard drive is fine. 8 gigabytes. We'll start with default options. We will set up the VDI, no big deal. I mean, other options are for more advanced users who want to port the VM somewhere else, but we're not there. We're still just learning, so let's keep it simple. Dynamically allocated, yes, we want the hardware to be dynamic, just in case you exceed that or you don't want to separate 8 gigs straight out of the gate. So it will allocate however much you need to install, and if it keeps growing, it will go all the way up to 8 gigs, but nothing more than that. And then we will say yes, store it with this name, and then we don't need to know where is it doing it. We just let VirtualBox handle it on the default folders. That way, if you're ever Googling for information, you know that it's on the default location where you're not just moving it around and then making it harder for you to find it later, or in case your Google or have any issues, you should be able to be okay in the default with using the defaults. So we go with create. We now have the shell. Now our job is to kind of get this ISO here, and to do that we will start the virtual machine. We will then find the location of where it is. So we're going to open up this folder, and we select which folder we want to select from our hard drive. So we'll say look inside of our desktop, and then from there go into the select the ISO. You could also just go to your downloads. You can go to any other folder, but this is something that you should be able to navigate. Open, start, and here the CD is going to boot up. The ISO is going to kick in. We're going to go into the installation screens. They should happen fairly quickly. Next thing you know is we have to kind of agree to a few things here on the screen. There's going to be a few pop-ups. Do notice that your mouse is kind of frozen. That's because it's inside of the virtual machine environment on the Mac. And don't quote me on Windows, like I said. On the Mac, you have to press the left command key to release the mouse, and then you can definitely start acknowledging those little pop-up windows that come up. And once we are inside of the installation screen, we will see a few things that will help us, through the installation. Some of those wizards of these, like we've seen in other OSs. So we go through the screens, pick a language, yes. Then out of this, all that's important is to double check that we are with minimal install. I mean, there's plenty of options here for you to select what kind of Unix server would you like. If it's just a file server, basic web server, one that's set up for virtualization. If you want desktop, no desktops. If you want a computational node with certain things enabled but not the others. But because we're going to keep in mind that we heard the professor talk about embedded systems and everything, we're going to try to keep it as slim as possible. So we're going to go ahead and say minimal install without any of the tools on the right-hand side, and then press done. In the hard drive, you just have to acknowledge that you are installing it on that location. After that, we're going to go to network and host name. I do like to name my machine, so I'm going to go and say this is my CS50 host, and then I'm going to turn on the network interface, because VirtualBox assigns you an IP. You don't have to do anything else. But in the event that you feel adventurous, you can always configure the IPs manually, meaning that it will always use the same one. So if you go to IPv4 settings and change that to manual, you could just give yourself a static IP, but you have to make sure that you configure the DNS correctly. Now, why is DNS important? In this case, it's picking these DNS servers. The reason why they're important is because if you want to perform any updates, you want to make sure that if you're going to perform any updates, you want to make sure that that DNS is actually there. Let's see what else you need to configure. Well, at this point, we can just press done. We can then begin the installation, and now we wait. All right, so it's almost done. Let's go ahead and just select the password. Keep something simple. This virtual machine is not going anywhere, so we're just going to go ahead and keep that to ourselves. If you get the warning that that's a simple password, don't worry about it. Just click through it and continue. I have a fast machine, but even then, still feels like it takes forever to download. So let's see, there should be 303 packages. We're not even a third of the way done, but that's changing fairly quickly. halfway there. I know sounds so tedious. It's like, it takes forever. Hopefully your computer won't take as long as mine. Hopefully it will be pretty fast. This is the second time I tried to install this today. The first time YouTube wasn't playing nice with me and I decided to cut the stream halfway there. So this is the second time I'm doing this, and now I'm like bored and out of jokes, because the first time I was all excited, like, yes, we're doing this, we're installing the OS, and we're getting everything ready. So this time I'm like, okay, let's just get it through it, please don't break, and till we can continue. All right, well, in the meanwhile, one thing that we are going to need to do, which is different from what we showed you yesterday, is in the settings. Is here the settings that we changed. So yesterday I showed you everybody needs to change the network type from a NAT to a bridge adapter, but that's not entirely true. That doesn't work everywhere. It does work if you're in a place where you have an open Wi-Fi and everybody can get IPs easily, but if you happen to be in any other university or in a place where you have to give credentials and every device that's connected to the wireless or the wire needs to be authenticated, that makes things a little bit more challenging. So what we'll do is we'll leave this to be with its default setting, we'll leave the NAT. But when the server comes back up and it actually reboots, we're going to go and turn it off. And before we turn it on, we're going to change the NAT setting. I mean, we're not going to change the NAT, sorry. We're going to change here in the advanced settings. We're actually going to configure something called port forwarding. And the only reason we're going to configure port forwarding is so it allows us to connect to the VM. So basically, from the host computer, we'll be able to connect to the VM, and we'll be configuring that in just a minute. We can't do it now because even if we were to do it right now, nothing will be saved and it wouldn't be functional. The virtual machine has to be shut down in order for this change to be applied. So we'll go ahead and just give it a minute until this is ready to go, and then we'll restart and get going. I guess when there's usually when there's people in front of me and when we have students and there's all these questions, it usually seems like it's going much faster because I'm usually talking or asking people how they're doing or going over another bit of material. But since we covered the other stuff yesterday and I'm not going to open up the slides now, we will review them again on Wednesday, and we'll start talking about JavaScript. We'll start talking about objects, closures, data types, different type of architectures. There's kind of no point. So it does seem like this is going very slow when you're just staring at the progress bar move one millimeter at a time. It just seems like it's just so slow. But anyways, I guess if I would have had already a VM already pre-configured, that would not be the same. You guys want to see this installation all the way through from beginning to end. One thing that's different is that even from the previous attempt that I did is I actually configure a user account, but then this time I'm actually thinking I'm not going to configure it. Some of the users' accounts can actually be configured once the VM is up and running, so we'll do that once it completes. And probably that's something that we can just do in class. We'll just set up the VM. We'll start giving ourselves accounts. That way we can simulate what it is to be a web developer, what it is to be a user on the system, and make sure that you have the right privileges and everything is running as it should. Now, still wondering why is this computer taking so long. I literally rebooted it like not that long ago. Let me see if I can show you that. Like everything in Unix, there's a few cool commands that we can run. One of those commands is called uptime. You can do this on your virtual machine. You can do this on any Linux box that you have. Uptime actually shows you the current time, so it's 6:04. How long has the machine been running since the last reboot? So the machine's been running for 22 minutes. Currently 2 users. That's basically the user that's not using the UI, and then of course another user that has this terminal. For every terminal that you have, they'll just add one more user to the count. And then this is just how busy the cores are running. This number could be higher than 1. On the past, people like to have these numbers under 1, but this number just represents how the average based on the number of cores. And since this computer is pretty good, right, with an i7, it has plenty of processors and plenty of computing power to just keep going. Also, we're having a virtual machine running from this OS, and at the same time, we're streaming this live. So I'm sure the computer is quite busy doing a lot of stuff right now, but still baffled as to why is this VM taking so long. Hopefully the video doesn't freeze again one more time, and then I'm left doing this for a third time in a row. Let's see, performing post-installation setup tasks. Come on, finish. Man, this looks like this was going so much faster when I was in front of everybody. Okay, I guess what I thought it was going to be a quick and easy 10, 15 minute, 20 minute video is now going to turn into a 30-minute video or longer. Still have no idea how long this is going to take. Hopefully, again, it doesn't break halfway through it, because then that will be really, really, really bad. Right, let's see what's going on with my computer. Look at that. Finally went through. I have no idea what was going on. It seems like it's finally finishing up the installation and getting ready to go. Come on. You got this. So definitely the CPU is being completely utilized by VirtualBox, then followed right up after that Google Hangout. So at least my computer is not going to blow up, but it's definitely making the fans speed, make all sorts of noises. They look like they're going to blow up any minute now. But all right, here we go. CentOS is actually booting up for the first time. We're going to go ahead and close that up. We don't need it anymore. We are now prompted with a login screen. We can say login with root, with your root password. Then after that, the first command that I'm going to show you is going to be shut down. Oops, sorry, I did not mean to type shit. Shut down -h now. So we're going to go and turn off the VM. Once we turn off the VM, we're going to go into the settings. Like I said, we're going to go into network. We're going to go into advanced. We're going to go into port forwarding. We're going to go and press add. We're going to select port 2222 to port 22. All right, so let's hold on for a second. I know no JavaScript has been shown in this video thus far, but what we have here is we're actually going to tell VirtualBox that we would like to connect to the VM from port 2222 to its local SSH. We have to use 2222 because in case that your machine has SSH open or you're using 22 for other purposes, we would like to map 2222 to the guest VM on 22. You don't need to fill up the IPs for the host or the guest. One thing that I will recommend is that let's just go and give this guy a name. So we'll just say this rule is for SSH purposes. We'll press OK, OK one more time, and then we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and start the VM one more time. Now, what we'll do is we will be able to not only type in through the console, through the VMware environment, but we will be able to connect using a terminal. If you're using Windows, you can download a piece of software called PuTTY, and that will allow you to SSH. So let's go ahead and get started. Here we go. We type in root. We'll type in our password, and hopefully I don't miss that. And there you go. So we are on the machine. Now, on my system, I'm going to go ahead and get out of there. What I have to do, oops, that's not what I meant. What I have to do is now I have to type in, of course, SSH, connect, and get ready. But before we do that, let me just look into something in my system, because I would like to remove a file that is probably going to make no sense the very first time you see it, but it'll make sense later if you start encountering these errors. So here's what we'll do first. The first thing we'll do is we'll type in SSH 127.0.0.1. That is your local host. You're connecting to yourself. You're using the account on root, and you would like to specify a particular port. In this case, you're going to use port 2222. I don't know if that's a bit too small, but I'm going to make that bigger so everybody can see. So using port 2222, connecting to your own local machine, we'll go ahead and type and enter. The first time you do this, you will notice something a bit off. If you ever SSH before, you'll notice that this is kind of strange. That's because this is a port map, so it does have a little bit of a different syntax. The next thing that you will notice is that you're actually being prompted to accept a fingerprint. This is just basically the way encryption works. When you do SSH, you have to accept the fingerprint from the server. We'll say yes. Once we do that, we'll prompt it for the password. We'll type in the password, and now we are connected. Like I said before, now there's two users on the system. One of them using the virtual monitor, and then the other one using the SSH. Now, what we can do is, of course, we can type in a message. So we can say, well, let's send the other guy a little message here. We can say hello. Just press enter, and then, oh, 1 second. You can see that the other terminal also gets the message, so we know that they're both the same environment. There are no tricks here. We're actually in this virtual machine. Now, it is much easier to work with the terminal or with PuTTY simply because of the fact that we can copy and paste, right? I can copy and paste commands such as this one. The very first one that I would like to share with you is called yum install. This is just, yum is the package manager. Install, of course, this is the keyword, this is the command that we would like to use, and then the first thing that we would like to do, just for security purposes and just to make sure that everything is okay, we would like to go ahead and update the OS. So we'll go ahead and type in yum install update. This, again, is going to take a few minutes, so hopefully the internet kicks in pretty fast. And now it says that there are no updates. All right. Oh, that's because it's not not install update. Sorry, that was, I guess I copy and pasted a few things and then I messed up. So it's yum update. There you go. That's what happens when you're trying to take shortcuts. So you're going to do yum update. Basically, it's going to check into the cloud. It only works if DNS is configured correctly, but since we left everything for default settings, everything should be fine. We're going to go and update the OS. This is going to download all security settings, anything that has to do with firewalls, anything that has to do with kernel, anything that has to do with any patches that need to be done. He's going to go and do it. Hopefully, you guys don't have to do that many updates because you're downloading the ISO directly from the website, and hopefully this ISO is the latest and greatest. I'm not even sure when was the last time I downloaded mine, so mine can be a little bit outdated. But anyways, it's going to the internet, it's downloading all the packages, and then we can go on and get ready. One thing that you cannot do is to try to install two things at the same time. So if I am updating the system and then I try to do a yum install PHP, it actually won't let me. It just kind of tells you that there's an existing lock on the system, so it won't let you try to update one or install more than one thing at a time. So in here, we just have to be a little bit patient. The OS will update, and then once it's done, we can go ahead and continue. I guess at this point, we no longer need to have VirtualBox open, and then this window as well, we can just go and minimize it. We can just run everything else from the terminal. Jesus, this is quite frustrating. It goes really fast and then it just stops. Like at the very last minute when he knows it's almost done and it's cleaning up and it's right about to come back to the main prompt, it just takes its sweet time. So just exit and be like, hey, done. One thing that it's here, I don't know if you guys are keeping track of the text that's coming down. One of them is Python. I did mention that Python is one of the programming languages that is installed there by default. So Python does get updated, as well as awk and a bunch of other things. Again, for security purposes, some of them are new packages that get installed. Some of them are just updates, depending on what the OS deems that needs to happen. And then now we're done. All right. So just to recap, one of the other things that we did yesterday was we tried to ping the internet. This was just basically to confirm that we were on the network. As a matter of fact, we should have done this before trying to do the updates, because this would have proven to us that, hey, we are on the network and we can definitely ping Google's DNS, public DNS IP. All right, so update is done. The next, we do need to install the extended package release. This is, of course, much easier if you're working on the terminal and then you can copy paste. I'm going to go and add the little -y option, or the little -y flag here, so it just doesn't prompt me to acknowledge every time I want to install something new. So I'm going to go and do that again. I'm going to do that for nodejs. Node.js, definitely missed the one. Node.js gets installed. And a few other things that we are going to install as well. I'm going to show them to you. Let's go ahead and install PHP. I know that some of you had to do some projects with PHP, for CS50. So we'll have this installed here as well, just so we can do a few compare and contrast. We will install then the Apache sorry, HTTP. What? Oh, sorry, it was HTTPD, but it was already installed. So great. Then what else are we going to install? Let's install another web server. It's called nginx, which you can also install it once you install the extended package release. And then last but not least, we will also go ahead and install Perl. Now Perl, the way I will install it is I'll install this thing, Perl, but a more specific package called the HTTP-Server-Simple. These will force one of the dependencies to get installed. So then basically everything's in there. As a matter of fact, nginx already forced Perl to get installed already. So there's a few overlaps when we install the Perl HTTP-Simple. Only a few things actually happen to get added to the OS, nothing else. And now we are ready. All right. That seemed like a lot of work. So what else did we end up doing last night? One of the things that we gave you a demo for was how to create a basic, very, very, very basic web server with PHP. And to do that, we noticed that for PHP, we need to know the IP address of the system. So we type in IPA, or I gave you a different version of that, was IPADDR or IPAD. I mean, all of these iterations basically yield to the same answer. It gives me the IP of the server. So I can then type PHP minus V if I would like to know the version, then uppercase S if I would like to turn in the web server, then localhost, the IP of the machine, which I had on the clipboard just a second ago, and then a particular port. In this case, I'm going to go and select port 80, and here's my web server. If everything was working as it should be, I should be able to type in my computer 127.0.0.1 and then press enter. But we know that that is not going to work because my computer cannot talk directly to the VM without making some tweaks. Now, what are some of those tweaks that we need to do? Well, unfortunately, if you're moving around like me from different environments where some of them are a little more secure than others, what you are going to be required to do is you're going to be required to do a port forward for every port that you're going to use. Therefore, before we do this, then we know that we need to go back to the settings of VirtualBox and add a new port. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go and do that. So let's go ahead and shut down -H now. So the SSH connection has been terminated. Now let's go ahead and open up VirtualBox again. Now we'll go back to our settings, the exact same location where we found the NAT, advanced port forwarding. Now we're going to go to another one, and we're going to say this is going to be HTTP. We will map port 8080 to port 80 on the server. We'll press OK, OK, and then start. Now, don't quote me on this one. I am not 100% sure if you need to stop the VM in Windows, but I did find some articles on the internet that mentioned that on the Mac, the changes don't happen automatically. You do have to restart the VM in order for them to kick in. So if you have Windows and you want to give it a shot, then be my guest. All right, so the VM is now at the login screen. We don't have to log into the console. We can just open up our terminal, and the same way we did it before, we should be able to connect. So here it is. We have the prompt. We are now on the system. Now, one of the reasons why I like to give myself a nice host name is because I can easily identify where I'm in the terminal. So if I see ggome002, that means that I'm in my own computer. But if I quickly take a glance and I have 5 terminal windows open, I can see that this one is connected to that VM. Now, after we do this, we're back to trying to configure PHP as a web server. That was one of the demos that we did yesterday. So I can go back into the history. If you guys press the up arrow, you guys will see that every command that you've typed is available. That's because the terminal, when the OS kind of keeps a history of the commands that you've run. Now, what I would like to do at this point is I would like to go back to that PHP-S and then open it up on port 80, because that's basically the rule that we opened. We said, hey, we would like to do anything that's going from our computer on port 8080, send that to the virtual machine on port 80. Now, this part is usually the part that everybody gets very frustrated because we still haven't seen any JavaScript, but that's because we cannot get the connectivity between point A and point B done correctly. And of course, this is the troubles that, after you develop this awesome app, you still want to make sure that you have connectivity and people can access your server. They can get to your awesome idea. Now, somebody said in class that one of the reasons why we can't get to it could be because of the firewall. It could be because access. And that guy was right. One thing that we did in the demo is we shut down the firewall. And for that command, we used, to do that, we used this particular command called systemctl. Let's just check the status first. So status. We know that we can see that the firewall is running. So we know that. We know that much. We know that the firewall is currently running. It's active. And then how do we stop it? We can do systemctl stop firewall D. Now the firewall is disabled. Now if I wanted to reload the website, it will be, not reachable because we don't have anything running on the computer. So we're going to go back into our server and then say, hey, we would like to turn on PHP. And then hopefully if I reload the page now, I have a very basic website. Of course, there is no index page. So I happen to find that nothing else is showing up. So I get the default 404 page from PHP. If I create a very basic file, such as an index.html, so I'm going to say, hello, JavaScript, and then I'm going to go back, redirect that to index.html. I now have a file, and if I start up the web server, I can then reload the page and then get that particular set of text. Now, I feel like up to this point, we've covered all the basics to set up the VM. Of course, get Node.js up and running. If you guys want to test Node.js, all you have to do is type in Node on your terminal, and then you go into this interactive console that you can start typing some code. So I can do things like very basic math. I can say x is equal to 76, and y is equals to 4. And then I can do things like x plus y, like having a very simple calculator in front of me. I can do x divided by y. Right? I can also do a little more advanced math, and I can say x modulus y. So 76 is an even number, and it happens to be divisible by 4 without any remainders. But I can change that. I can then say 77, and then come back to the remainder, and it will give me a remainder. So everything that's here, it's JavaScript. We can work into this. We can work with this interactive console. The next thing that I would like to show you is the following. So here's one thing that happens. Let's just say that you have configured the VM twice, right? And when you configure the VM twice, the one thing that's going to always remain the same is the way you connect to it. So when you SSH to your VM, you're always going to do SSH IP, the username, and the port. But this IP is always going to be the same. But if you destroy the VM and it comes back up, something changes. Now, that thing that changes for security purposes is the fingerprint. The fingerprint gets randomly generated every time the OS boots for the first time, but there's a way for us to recreate it. So I'm going to execute this command, which you don't have to do. I'm just doing it just for the sole purpose of illustrating a point in the event that you removed the VM and you're doing it again. If you run this command, you're basically going to tell the system that you would like to replace what's called the ECDSA key in your system. So we would like to say yes. Now, this is the new fingerprint that your system is going to offer the clients. Now, what's going to happen is that as long as I'm connected, nothing wrong is going to happen. But here's the catch. As soon as I exit the system, I try to connect again, I get this very, very nasty message. Now, notice this is a VM. Nobody's playing a man-in-the-middle attack. Nobody's doing anything. All that happened is that either A, I destroyed the VM and I started again. And of course, because I'm connecting with the same host, the system is trying to protect me, saying, hey, somebody is trying to do something malicious because I have this key, but it so happened the key that the new key happens to be this one, so they don't match. So the system's like, hey, alert, warning, heads up. So one of the things that it tells you to do, it tells you to go to your known host files, and then of course remove them. If you remove line 27, you can then avoid this. Now, I'm not going to do this in front of you guys simply because I have a lot of other keys that I don't want them to be, public, or IPs. I don't want them to be published on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on a different window. So I'm going to grab the location of the file. I'm going to open up a new terminal, say vi, paste it. But before I press enter, I'm going to move this to another screen. Press enter, go to line number 27, then delete that line. Update the file, and then now if I try to SSH one more time, I am prompted to acknowledge it again and to say, hey, this is the new SSH key. Would you like to accept? Yes. As a matter of fact, I'm actually mistaken. The key, this is the new key. The old key is somewhere else. This is the hex version of that. So I know this gets a little complicated. There's so much cryptography in here, but nothing that you really need to know too much about it. Just know there's a warning. You need to keep an eye for it. Keep an eye. If you see it, if you don't, then that's great. If you ever encounter it, just remember, hey, at least I saw it once, and I know more or less what this means. The next thing is we would like to look at the finger. Remove that warning. Come back. We would like to accept the fingerprint. Say yes, and then of course we can connect to the server. And I think that's it. I hope that everybody is up to speed, that everybody gets to install CentOS on your own VirtualBox on your computers, that everybody gets to install all the packages that we have over here. Hopefully, if you already installed CentOS once, that you're looking at the video, if you got that nasty error message, you know how to solve it. And then a few things that we will do in class tomorrow is we will be looking at a few other tools that are provided with Chrome. Chrome has its own SSH tool that you can run from a browser, which is pretty cool. We will also be looking at Atom, at the IDE, for it to help us push some of the code to our VM, so we can actually get a feeling of what it is to work with a client server, actually submitting some source code there, and we'll take it from there. All right, guys, so hopefully you guys like the video and everybody's up to speed tomorrow. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Have a good one.